Welcome to Apache Mastery. Let's get your hands on a real web server. Over the next 13 lessons, we're going from a fresh apt install Apache 2 all the way to shipping a TLS-protected virtual host with a reverse proxy in front of it. And yes, despite what you've heard about Nginx taking over, Apache still quietly serves around 30% of the web. WordPress, cPanel, Plesk, mountains of enterprise legacy. If you work with Linux or PHP, it will land on your desk, so we'll take it patiently. Real configs, no magic, one step at a time. Now, before we go further, let's be honest about who this is for. This course is built for genuine beginners, not folks who've clicked around cPanel and want a deeper look. If you can move around a Linux shell with cd, ls, sudo, and a text editor, if you roughly know what an HTTP request and a status code are, and you can SSH into a virtual machine, you're ready. You don't need to know anything about Apache yet. That's literally why you're here. And we're staying server only. No Nginx detours, no PHP frameworks, no containers or Kubernetes. Just one VM and Apache. So here's the path ahead. 12 more lessons, grouped into 4 stages. We start with foundations. What Apache actually is, getting it installed, and learning to read httpd.conf. Then Stage 2 opens up virtual hosts, directories, and .htaccess. Stage 3 brings the power features, mod, rewrite, modules, and the npm process models. And Stage 4 is where it gets real, logging, SSL, TLS, and finally a reverse proxy you can actually ship. Each lesson builds on the last. By L12, you'll have a production-shaped setup, not a toy. Now, you've probably heard that Nginx replaced Apache. It's half true. Nginx leads on the busy front end of the web, but Apache is still running about 30% of all sites, powers roughly 95% of WordPress hosting through cPanel and Plesk, and quietly holds up almost every enterprise legacy stack you'll ever inherit: banks, government, telcos, old SaaS. Migrations take years. Until then, someone keeps it running. In Linux ops, that someone is you. So before we go any further, let's strip Apache down to what it actually is. It's a web server. It takes HTTP requests, figures out what to do with them, and sends a response back. That's the whole job. In practice, you'll see it wearing 4 hats: serving static files straight from disk, running PHP apps like WordPress, acting as a reverse proxy in front of a backend like Node or Tomcat, and terminating TLS so your internal services can stay plain HTTP. Same engine, 4 roles, and across this course you'll configure all of them. Now, the lab setup, and I want to keep this boring on purpose. 1 Linux VM, Ubuntu or Debian, 2 GB of RAM, sudo access, and a working internet connection for APT. That's it for the next 10 lessons. Cloud Droplet, local Vagrant Box, WSL on your laptop, all fine. The only thing you'll add later, around lesson 11, is a real domain name pointing at the VM, so Let's Encrypt can issue you a certificate. Until then, localhost and a few entries in, etc., hosts will carry you the whole way. With the VM ready, let's talk about how to actually use this series, because the difference between watching and learning comes down to 3 habits. First, type every command by hand. No copy-paste. Slower, yes, but your fingers remember what your eyes forget. Second, break things on purpose. Comment out a directive, misspell something, watch Apache complain, then read the error and fix it. Those error messages are the best teacher you'll have. And third, 1 lesson at a time. Don't binge. Apache concepts compound, and a day of sitting with virtual host beats a weekend speedrun every time. Now, before we go any further, let's load 7 words into your head, because Apache speaks its own dialect, and you'll hear these on every slide from here on. HTTPD is just the process name, the HTTP daemon. Same thing Ubuntu calls Apache 2. httpd.conf is the main config file. A virtual host says, when this domain comes in, serve that site, while a directory block controls what's allowed under a file system path. htaccess is a per-folder override, powerful and a little dangerous, We'll get to it in Lesson 6. Modules, the mod, prefixed ones, are plugins. Mod SL gives you HTTPS. Mod rewrite handles URL rewriting. And MPM, the multiprocessing module, is how Apache juggles concurrent requests. Don't memorize the details yet, just recognize the words when they show up. With those words in your toolbox, take a real look at where this is heading. What's on screen is the finale. Lesson 12. A virtual host listening on 443, terminating TLS with Let's Encrypt certificates, reverse proxying to an app on localhost 8080 with its own separate error and access logs. Right now, it might look like a wall of mystery, and that is completely fine. Come back to this slide after Lesson 12, and you'll read it line by line. And you'll have written something just like it yourself. That gap between mystery now and fluency then is the whole journey. Now, before that journey begins, a moment of honesty about what this series will not cover. Performance tuning at scale, the max request workers, and MPM event deep dive, that's an advanced topic for later. Full security hardening with mod security and OWASP rules deserves its own series. We'll touch basic TLS hardening in Lesson 11, but no more. Migrating from Apache to NGINX is important enough to get its own 13-lesson Sorazat after this one. And containerizing Apache for Kubernetes? Honestly, rare in practice. NGINX Ingress owns that space. Setting these boundaries keeps our 13 lessons focused and real. So with the boundaries clear, here's what I'm committing to in return. 5 promises for the next 13 lessons. Every config will be real, pulled straight from a working IS Apache. Every error gets translated from Apache's cryptic dialect into plain language. Nothing works by magic, and I'll always tell you why. The final lesson ships a production-shaped vhost, not a toy, and no padding. About 12 minutes per lesson, 1 a day, 2 weeks, and you're done. If I break any of these, thumbs down, and I'll fix it. And that's Lesson 00 in the bag. 13 lessons mapped, lab requirements clear, vocabulary previewed, scope kept honest. Next up, we meet Apache properly. The process called HTTPD, the files living in IS Apache 2, how it stands apart from NGINX, IIS, and Caddy, and the mental model you'll want before touching a single config line. See you in Lesson 01.